Okay, let's unpack this. It is Tuesday, February 17, 2026. And if you've been anywhere near a news feed in London today, you know that a massive legal battle has just wrapped up in the High Court.
It certainly has, and this is going to send shockwaves, I think.
We are talking about a real head-to-head conflict here between two absolute heavyweights.
We are. On one side, you have the Metropolitan Police Service, the UK's largest police force.
And on the other?
The Freemasons, specifically the United Grand Lodge of England.
It sounds like the plot of a Dan Brown novel, doesn't it? You know, secret societies, high courts, police corruption.
It does sound like fiction, but I have to stop you there because what we are looking at today is very real administrative law. And the stakes are, I would argue, significantly higher than a thriller.
Okay, so what's the headline?
The High Court has thrown out the Freemasons' legal challenge. The Met can now force officers to declare if they are Masons.
That is a huge shift. And to get to the bottom of this, we've gone through a serious stack of materials for this deep dive.
We have. We've got the 17-page ruling from Mr. Justice Chamberlain delivered this morning, press statements from the Met, the Police Federation.
And we've even dug back into parliamentary reports from the late 90s and some sociological studies to really understand the context.
And you need all of that context because, you know, we aren't here to debate if Freemasonry is good or bad. That's a whole other conversation.
Right.
Our mission today is to explore that tension between an officer's right to a private life and the public's right to trust the people enforcing the law. Where is that line drawn?
And today, the High Court drew that line very clearly in the sand. But to understand why the judge ruled this way, we have to look at the specific policy that triggered this whole thing.
Exactly. This didn't just come out of nowhere.
It's been brewing for a while.
Since December 2025, that's when the Met updated what they call their Declarable Associations policy.
And this is basically a list of groups officers have to tell their bosses they're a part of.
Yes, and they set out 3 very specific criteria.
The wording here is fascinating. It's not just secret societies, is it?
No, it's much more specific. The organization has to be hierarchical, it has to have confidential membership, and this is the real kicker.
Go on.
It requires members to support and protect each other.
Support and protect each other, which sounds great on paper, like a brotherhood.
Right.
But in a policing context, that sounds a lot like covering up for each other.
Precisely. And the Met explicitly named Freemasonry in that policy guidance. They didn't leave any wiggle room.
So the Freemasons obviously didn't take that lying down?
Not at all. The United Grand Lodge of England, the Order of Women Freemasons, and 2 anonymous officers, referred to in court as FSK and IPS, they took the Met to court for a judicial review.
And their argument was, I mean, it was pretty strong, wasn't it? Their lawyer, Claire Darwin KC, argued that this policy basically creates a blacklist.
She did. She called it an institutional signal of suspicion.
She went further than that, right?
She did. She argued the police were relying on conspiracy theories and prejudicial tropes. The idea was that by forcing declaration, you're stigmatizing them. You're implying that just being a Mason makes you dodgy.
It's the classic defense. We're just a charitable social club. Why are you demonizing us?
Exactly.
But Mr. Justice Chamberlain didn't buy it.
Not at all. In his ruling today, he said the policy serves a legitimate aim,
Which is?
maintaining and enhancing public trust. He just completely rejected the human rights arguments, Article 8 for privacy, Article 11 for association.
Let's pause on Article 8, because that's the big one. My right to a private life, what I do off the clock is my business right.
In a vacuum, yes. But the judge essentially said, when you put on the badge, your private life shrinks. There was a quote from the ruling that really nails this.
What did he say?
He said the policy is designed to secure the proper exercise of the functions of a constable.
The proper exercise of the functions of a constable. That's very formal, but it cuts right to the core of the job.
It does. And the Met's lawyer, James Barry KC, made a really nuanced point here. I don't want to get lost. He wasn't saying Masons are corrupt.
What was he saying then?
He said the FET isn't responsible for the stigma that exists, but they are responsible for addressing it.
Which brings us to that concept of perceived bias versus actual bias.
Yes. Think of it like a referee in a football game, World Cup final. The ref might be the most honest person on the planet.
Okay.
But if he walks onto the pitch wearing one of the team's jerseys under his uniform, the game is ruined.
Even if every single call he makes is fair.
It doesn't matter. The second he makes a call that helps his team, half the stadium will scream, "Fix." The trust is just gone.
So the law doesn't care if the officer is actually biased.
Exactly. It cares if the public thinks they might be. The judge ruled that eliminating that perceived bias is worth the intrusion into the officer's privacy.
So the policy stands. What's really interesting to me is the internal reaction. Because you'd think if this is such a secret society, no one would admit to being in it.
Well, the numbers tell a different story. In court, it was revealed that about 400 Met officers and staff have already made declarations.
400.
397 were cited specifically, and the majority of those are Freemasons.
Wow.
And I think it's important to mention a nuance here that listeners might miss, because the headlines are all screaming, registry?
Right.
The Met gave assurances this isn't a public registry. You can't just go online and look up if your local PC is a worshipful master.
So my neighbor can't snoop on me. It's restricted access.
Exactly. It's held by a small number of vetting and professional standards staff used for risk assessment, not public shaming.
But even with those assurances, the pushback from the rank-and-file leadership has been fierce.
Oh, absolutely. The Metropolitan Police Federation, their General Secretary Matt Cain, was not mincing words today.
He called the policy unnecessary and wrong and unenforceable, didn't he?
He did. Yeah. And he used that classic slippery slope argument.
Yeah, he said, where does it end? Will membership of golf clubs, religious organizations, or even the Scouts be next?
It's the standard argument. But here's where the Met played their ace card. They countered the Federation's outrage with their own data.
From when?
They ran an internal consultation back in October 2025, so they asked the actual officers what they thought. The results were fascinating. 66% of the officers who responded felt that Masonic membership does affect the perception of impartiality.
2/3.
And 64% agreed it affects public trust.
So the Federation is screaming, this is an outrage, but 2/3 of the actual workforce are saying, actually, yeah, this is a problem.
It's a massive disconnect. And the written comments from that survey, the qualitative feedback, was so telling. Officers mentioned concerns about nepotism.
About promotions.
Promotions, getting off lightly in misconduct hearings because you knew the right people in the right lodge.
It's that old phrase, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Right.
But I keep getting stuck on the timing. Why is the Met picking this fight now in 2026?
Well, if you want to understand the why now, all roads lead back to one name. A name that still haunts Scotland Yard.
Daniel Morgan.
Daniel Morgan, the private investigator murdered in 1987.
I know the name, but for people who haven't followed the saga, why is a murder from almost 40 years ago driving policy today?
Because it was never just a murder. Daniel Morgan was found in a pub car park with an axe embedded in his head.
Horrific.
Brutal, visceral. But the horror wasn't just the violence, it was the investigation that followed.
Or the lack of one.
Exactly. The initial investigation was compromised almost immediately. Evidence went missing. Witnesses were intimidated. Over the decades, 5 separate police inquiries.
And all of them failed.
All of them failed to secure a conviction.
Which led to that massive report a few years back.
Yes. In 2021, the Daniel Morgan Independent Panel released this scathing report. They accused the Met of institutional corruption.
And they didn't just mean officers taking bribes in envelopes, did they?
No. They meant an institution that prioritized its own reputation over honesty, covering up incompetence to save face.
And that report specifically mentioned Freemasonry.
It did. Recommendation 14 specifically called for mandatory registration of Freemasonry for police. The panel found that the suspicion of Masonic influence was festering.
So today's court ruling is the final implementation of that recommendation.
It is. It's part of what the Met calls Operation Dreyfern, and it marks a massive shift in the power dynamic.
How so?
If you go back to the late 90s, the Home Affairs Committee recommended registries then too. But back then, the United Grand Lodge of England basically said no.
They just refused.
Pretty much. They said, we won't give you the names. So the government had to rely on voluntary disclosure, which was, surprise, surprise, totally ineffective.
So today's ruling flips that.
It does. The state can now compel this information. The desire for secrecy has officially lost to the public confidence imperative.
But this raises the big question, doesn't it? Is there actually a Masonic mafia inside the police?
Yeah.
Or is this just institutional paranoia born out of the Daniel Morgan trauma?
That is the million-dollar question. And there's a real friction here between suspicion and actual proof.
The evidence gap.
The evidence gap. You look at the big inquiries from the 90s West Midlands Serious Crime Squad, Birmingham pub bombings, massive miscarriages of justice.
And they found Masons involved in those.
They did, but, and this is important, the inquiries concluded that Freemasonry was not the primary cause of the corruption. They said it was unhealthy, but not the